Happy Devils Wednesday. This is the State of the Fan Address, episode 101. I'm your host, Sam Wu, here with Pucks and Pitchforks blog editor-in-chief Nick Villano, streaming live on Facebook Live, Twitter, Periscope for 1 week only, YouTube Live, and Twitch, and on the Primetime Radio Network. Wow. They call it the New Jersey Devils youth movement, Nick. It is a youth movement. The stat that came out last night with Devils players 23 or under having 115 points cumulative, and most in the league by far. And it's only just getting better because there were a couple signing announcements today.
Yeah, and I wrote about this a little bit, and it's also going to come into a article that's coming tomorrow on pucksandpitchforks.com with my second half predictions, because of those, I think you said 113 points, 57 are coming from rookies. So Ty Smith leading among them with 17 points, Johnny Kuokkanen having a really good season, Yegor Sharangovich. I think that number just from the rookies, Sam, by the end of the season is 120. Thanks to the signing today of Tyce Thompson, who Corey Masisak, who we're going to have in a couple weeks, talk trade deadline. See, I'm teasing all day. Teasing. I'm a teasing madman, Sam. Teasing. But let's talk about the here and now. The here and now is that Tyce Thompson just signed his entry-level contract. 2-year deal with the New Jersey Devils. His Providence season surprisingly ended. I thought they were going to get into the tournament for the Frozen Four, but they didn't. And now his season's over. It was his junior season, and he signed with the Devils. This was an important season for him because a lot of people attributed a lot of his stats, especially last year when he was a Hobie Baker nominee for a lot of the season. Fell off a little bit towards the end, but still, he was in that conversation for best college player. And, he was playing alongside Jack Dugan, who's having just a little bit of a better season. So some people were saying he was a product of Dugan, and I think he had 44 points in 36 games, so he was scoring more than a point per game. He was playing really well, but Dugan went to the Golden Knights this season. So he's gone. He wasn't in Providence. So Tyce kind of had to do a lot of this on his own. There's still some good players in Providence. I think Moynihan's there. Patrick Moynihan, another Devils prospect, but he's not like a top-line guy who's going to contribute many points. But anyway, the point being is that Thompson had 25 points in 25 games this season, including 11 goals. So he was able to find the score sheet. He would have done even better, but his coach, Nate Lehman, who has been rumored to be, a target of the Buffalo Sabres for their head coach, he put him at center. It just never worked. If you can put a center at wing, but it's really hard to put a wing at center. Doesn't always translate well. So, he put him back at wing, and he just got a more natural feel. He started putting on more points, started scoring at a much higher level. He was back to, getting fans excited, and I'm really excited for him. But like I said, Corey Masisak is reporting that he thinks that he's going to play in the NHL right away. He thinks he's going to be on the taxi squad after his quarantine to kind of get used to the system and what Lindy Ruff expects from his players. But Tyce Thompson is going to be on this team and in a New Jersey Devils uniform maybe in 3 weeks. And
wow.
Yeah, I mean, that's huge. That's huge. So that's going to be a lot of fun. And that coincides with what are we, about 3 weeks from the trade deadline. So that coincides as a perfect timing to get him in the lineup when the Devils are probably going to lose some veterans. The other one you're talking about, I'm going to say his name wrong, but it's Arn, I believe it's Talvati, but I'm probably saying it wrong, and I apologize. I will learn how to say it better. The former Penn State. But he's not as exciting as Thompson. He was, at one point, one of the most exciting prospects in the Devil system. He played really well for, I want to say Finland. Oh, man, that's escaping me. I'm sorry. But in the World Junior Championship game, and he tore up his knee. And that was during his freshman season at Penn State. It took him a season to really get back acclimated to playing on the knee. And then this past year, Penn State was struggling at times. They played well down the stretch. They didn't make the tournament either, But, he was playing top line for them for most of the season from what I saw. I didn't check on it in probably a couple weeks, so maybe he fell off, but he was playing in the top 6. He was contributing, but at a much smaller level than Thompson. So he signs an AHL deal. It's clear that he's going to be in Binghamton for the rest of the season and probably all of next season, unless he has something like a Igor Sharangovich, ascent to greatness this offseason. But I think he's going to be in Binghamton. But let me ask you this, Sam. Real quick, because I know we have to get our guests in like 7 minutes. But I looked at our forward lines and what they could look like if we had no veterans. If we traded every veteran, every single one, what our lines could look like next year include a top line of Hughes, Holtz, and Sharangovich, a second line of Bratt, Thompson, and Nico Hischier, a third line of Zacha, Kuokkanen, and maybe like a Nick Merkley or a Boquist, or there's a couple other players that you put there, or Dawson Mercer. Maybe Dawson Mercer jumps into the NHL next year, and then you have a bottom line of Miles Wood, Michael McLeod, and Nate Bastian. Like you have 12 NHL ready forwards in the system who are basically, I think Miles Wood's about to be 26, but basically 25 and under. Most of them under the age of 23. And Sam, that's not including Jesper Boquist. That's not including Mikhail Maltsev. That's not including Nolan Foote. That's not including some of these really good prospects. Not Fabian Zetterlund, Marian Studenic. There's other prospects that could be really, really good, and I'm not even counting them. And you have a top 12 already. Already, there's a top 12, and that's not including players that are in the NHL right now. Sam, the future is, I know people say like the Rangers got the brightest future in the NHL, the Kings got the brightest future in the NHL. Cool, whatever. I will put that top 12 of players 23, 24, and under against anybody's.
Well, yeah, and it took about 5-6 years to get there. Mm-hmm. Different regime. The Lou Lamoriello DNA is really fading. This is really Ray Shero, Tom Fitzgerald team. Built with Ray Shero in the beginning, but now Fitzgerald. I think the lesson learned here, because the Devils were going on many cup runs, you never, ever let that pipeline falter. Keep drafting, keep drafting, because right now, I'm not saying that the Devils are stacked with young prospects. I think that they have a very bright future because there's only so many spots. They've got their salary cap situation. They have enough room to spare, so to speak. But also, it gives the GM so much flexibility that what if, and here is a scenario, I'm just making an example. This is not speculating, but I'm just making an example. Say if something happens in Edmonton where they had to trade Connor McDavid. Just say if. It'll never happen. But then again, we said that about Gretzky years ago. But say if that happens.
I think it was a different time, but I understand what you're trying to get at.
But which team has young assets, enough salary cap room, and is long distance away from the Western Conference to make that kind of trade? There's only certain teams that could. Would trade. I think the Devils actually have enough pieces to pull off that trade if that miraculously happened. That's due to good drafting, as we see so far, with the rebuild. Also, good money management whoever's the captologist and all the analytics people, you know what? I've been very critical, but hey, they've got money to spend if they want to. You just don't spend money just to spend money's sake. And I think the Devils have a lot of leverage and still a lot of pieces to sell before NHL trade deadline. That didn't happen overnight. That was all strategic as far as I'm concerned. Now, could they have played a little bit better? Yes. I thought last year was a kind of a dud, but it was a reality check. Jack Hughes is still very, very, very young. He's not going to carry the team yet.
Yeah.
He may not even ever carry the team. Who knows? He could be the sidekick of Nico Hischier. Who knows? But it doesn't matter. I think the Devils are looking very, very good with this youth movement, and keep signing him, keep developing him, and even better. And I've mentioned this so many times. Binghamton, Nick. Hey, when they claw back and make comebacks like they did last year, only to be shut down because the whole COVID thing was beyond their control. And then they've been coming back in some of these games this season. You know what?
They definitely look better.
I think they're teaching these kids how to win. And I think that's the most important thing, aside from having a young team.
Yeah. And the only other team that is in that conversation is the Rangers. I think the Kings, they have too many big salaries on the board. The Rangers are going to have $30 million next season and $50 million the season after. The issue is next season they had to pay Shesterkin. They had to play Schittle, Gauthier, Howden, Buchnevich. They had to play Lindgren and Hajek. Now, none of those are going to cost that much. I think Shesterkin's going to cost around Blackwood, between Georgiev and Blackwood money, maybe like $3 million a year. Lindgren's going to not be too bad. Buchnevich is going to be around 3 to 4 to 5, somewhere in that range. But the problem is that in 2 years they have to pay Adam Fox. And Adam Fox has earned a $8 to $10 million contract. And they're going to have to pay him because he's the best, by far the best defenseman on that team, and he's 23. I don't know what they pay Lindgren. I don't know Hajek and Schittle. Those three, I'm very confused of how you pay them because they've been inconsistent, but they have superstar potential, so they're going to try to cash in on that. And then in 2 years, Zibanejad's gone, Strome is gone, unless they resign them, and they're going to want raises. And Strome is making 4.5, Zibanejad is making 5.3. So you're going to give Zibanejad 7 and Strome 5? I don't think that's a smart way to do it. And then you can't get Jack Eichel. I guess you can. You'll have no bottom six. You'll have to trade away all these prospects. They're going to look for raises. Then you won't have money to pay Lafreniere. You won't have money to pay Kakko. These are the situations that you're going to put yourself in, and the Devils aren't in that situation. You look at their salary caps figure; they already paid Nico, and he's about it. Andreas Johnson has a pretty bad contract, whatever. But Severson's locked up; he's really good. Ty Smith is locked up for 2 more seasons after this at $860,000. Great. You have players like McLeod and Merkley and Kuokkanen and Sharon Govich are all restricted free agents. Those are all going to be really interesting contract negotiations, but they're not going to be anywhere near what the Rangers have to pay people. So I think the Devils are in pretty good shape, and I think that I think the Devils are in pretty good shape when it comes to, in the future, trying to acquire a high-price forward because they have so many prospects to sell, and they have a ton of cap space. But Sam, you're back. That was fast.
Oh, yeah. It definitely is fast. Normally, I'm chit-chatting and getting distracted. Oops, did I just say that? Anyway, we have a special guest on the line right now. His name is Robert Aitken. He's a New Jersey Devils writer for NorthJersey.com. Robert, you're on with Sam and Nick. How are you tonight?
I'm doing better. think I listened to the beginning of that from you, and you got me all jazzed up now, thinking of the second half of this season and beyond.
Oh, I mean, it's the Devils are in a very good position for this year. Just looking at this year, and we're going to ask you about a couple of those things coming up. But Robert, writer for NorthJersey.com, also known as The Record. I believe it was formerly known as the Bergen Record. But you've been covering the Devils this year, kind of getting an idea of what's coming up, and it's been a mess of a season to start. But I think a lot of that can be blamed on the virus and the outbreak, and it looks like that it could be different based on how they played over the last week. But Robert, I'm just going to jump right into it. I kind of want to see what you're thinking about this team. Do you think that what we've seen over the past week is more like what we're going to see for the next 6 to 8 weeks, or do you think that this is just kind of like coming back to the mean and this is making up for those terrible weeks?
I think what you've been seeing lately is more of the norm of what you can expect. Like you said, the COVID shutdown really damaged and kind of derailed the season early on. You could see it really impact certain players dramatically. And even players, there were signings in January. Those guys are trying to get themselves acclimated. And it's hard to get yourself acclimated when you get in, you play maybe 1 or 2 games, and all of a sudden you're shut down again. When they came back, you could tell that they were not themselves. And I was saying early on that they were kind of leading the East in moral victories. But now they're getting to the point where, they can actually, there's no points for moral victories. And now you're getting to the point where you want them to get points, and they're starting to come through for you. And they're coming through for Lindy Ruff, absolutely.
Yeah, I think that I was a little down on him a couple weeks ago because he just couldn't seem to pull this team out of the hole. And, it looked like there was a lot of coaching problems. The penalty kill is a problem. The point power play is a problem. And that still probably hasn't been fixed. But it seemed a lot of it was strategy over just the players. But maybe it was a little bit of both now looking back at it. But now you look at see what he's doing again, and he's got them playing well.
I got to say, I give Lindy Ruff a lot of credit just from everything that's happened this season with the injuries, with the COVID shutdown, with everything that's gone on. He has not made a single excuse for this team, and he's had multiple opportunities where he can make excuses, and he just hasn't. You even think back to the overtime goal that wasn't against the Islanders with the review and all that stuff. He could have made plenty of excuses then, and he kind of just took it, for the way that it came. And this team is not making excuses. So, when they don't play well, they're the first ones that are telling us after the game, we didn't play well.
So, weirdly enough, people have been pointing out to me that the Devils are only 8 points out of a playoff spot despite how bad they played. Now, Boston has 7 games against Buffalo left, so I don't think the playoffs are really in reach. But, maybe they don't want to sell everything off because maybe they want to get some of these young players used to winning a little bit, and maybe they want to get them acclimated to what it's like to make a push. But what do you think? The trade deadline is April 12th. It's about 3 weeks away, a little less than 3 weeks away. What do you expect them to do? Do you expect them to be a little bit more conservative and let the deals come to them? Or do you think they're going to be aggressive like they were last year and just sell off as many pieces as they can?
I think this is such a unique season. Obviously, we're getting 16 playoff teams like we normally do. But with the way the divisions are and the way that you're getting top 4 from each division, forget about the Devils for a second. You have 16 playoff teams right now. If you look at the standings right now, you have 7 other teams that are all within 4 points of a playoff spot right now. So you're talking about 23 possible 31 teams that are really within striking distance of a playoff spot right now. And the Devils are a few points behind that, but I think we can all be realistic and maybe not get ourselves too high on that. There's going to be a lot of suits for a lot of different possible things, and it's nice to think that you can have your pick of the store. But I'm curious if it might be best for you to take veterans like Kyle Palmieri, like a Travis Zajac who's been a Devil for life, and keep them here and not, look for someone who's going to try to give you something. I would argue that Travis Zajac, the way that he's played on that line, the STK line, I guess they've been calling it as of late. I would argue, I don't know, where that name really came from, but it's what they're going with right now.
It doesn't make a ton of sense, but
no, I get it. I think they were trying to find something. They can't all be the egg line like from years ago.
Yeah.
So they can't all be that. I would argue though that those guys are performing as well as they are because they're performing with Travis Zajac, and they're, it's all complimentary. You saw Kyle Palmieri with his first power play goal of the season yesterday. And I really think it might be good to kind of keep everyone together for the most part. I mean, granted, you do have some unrestricted free agents after this season. You could look at, maybe a Ryan Murray as a trade for someone that needs a defenseman. But I don't really know if I would rock the boat too much. I think you want to keep some of these veterans on here to actually develop the young talent that you have on the roster right now.
yeah, I don't think that's a terrible idea. But like you said, with so many teams, and looking at the other side of what you said, because you made a good point that there's 7 teams within 4 points, so that makes 23 teams. That means there's only 8 teams selling, and half of those teams probably don't have anything good to sell. And when you look at Anaheim, they got Raquel, but then their next tradable asset is Adam Henrique. So it's a questionable asset, to say the least. And you look at Ottawa, like they're not going to trade a lot of the players that people would want. And you look at Detroit, is Detroit going to trade Mantha? If they're not, then what are they really trading? So there's a lot of question marks with those other 8 teams that are trading, that the Devils can now take advantage of that because they have a lot of assets to sell. They could sell half of their unrestricted free agents and still have enough veterans to really help these rookies and these younger players get to where they need to be and take to that next level, like you said, that Zajac has done with Sharangovich and Kuokkanen. Before they got together, Kuokkanen was playing well, but it was a little inconsistent, in and out of the lineup a little bit. And then before Sharangovich got with Zajac, he was up and down the lineup. He was playing with Hughes one night, and then he was on the 4th line one night. Then he was on the 3rd line. But they really found a chemistry together, so I agree. And Travis, he's a lifelong Devil. He's a little bit different than a Murray or even a Palmieri. We love Palmieri in New Jersey, but he was drafted by the Ducks. He's not a lifelong Devil like Zajac is. So it's if you could find a way to make that work, I think a lot of people would like to make that work. One player that has been playing well, but strangely only got, I think, his 2nd goal of the season on the overtime goal against Pittsburgh is Jesper Bratt. And, his XG looks good. His CF percentage looks good. All those advanced stats look good. And he even has points, but he has 2 goals. And I think when you're looking at wingers with these centers, with Nico Hischier, with Jack Hughes, and eventually Pavel Zacha, and maybe another 1 or 2 year extension of Travis Zajac, they need finishers, and that's what they expect Bratt to be. So what are you looking at when you see him on the ice? Do you see him as a player who can be that, or do you think they have to kind of change the philosophy on him a little bit?
I think that yes, when he's out there, you could even see it in the overtime period. He had a couple of chances, and he was really buzzing out there. Him specifically was he was buzzing in that overtime period. It made you feel good that he was the one that got that goal in overtime with the wraparound. Jesper, he didn't sign. He didn't sign until January 10th. So it took him a while to meet up with the team. To check in with everybody. His first game was the 28th. We know what happened after January 31st. So right as he was getting going, right as he was getting acclimated into the lineup, everything shut down. And then you have to build back up just like everyone else in the team had to build back up. But right now, he has a point in 7 of his last 9. He's got a point in 5 straight games. Jesper's finally being able to play and play consistently. He's earning those shifts. He's earning that ice time, and he's a complementary piece. He's not going to be the face of a specific line, but certainly a complementary piece with all of the other young goal scorers that you have on the team right now.
So just to follow up on that, do you think long term that Brad is a winger for Hughes or Heischer?
I would probably put him with Hughes if you could. I think that Jesper's kind of found the ability that he can make that extra pass. He can find that guy. He can fill the lane where he needs to, and that I think complements a guy like Hughes very, very well. Hughes can make things happen on his own, but if you give him a guy like Jesper and what he's able to do, that kind of it's almost like he has his, like, I don't want to say sidekick necessarily, but he has someone complimentary with him that he can kind of play two-man with, essentially. When they're on a rush, you can see them kind of, as a give and go, working with one another.
Yeah, I agree. I think that we've seen that chemistry a little bit this year. I kind of wish that Ruff would let that build a little bit, but he's got a method, so I'm not going to question him. What I am going to question is Mackenzie Blackwood. He's looked great this week. Even yesterday, I'm going to take out those last two goals because the Devils were clearly playing prevent defense, and when that happens, it's almost like the other team's going to score goals. But he was playing pretty well in the first two periods. He played phenomenal against Pittsburgh, and he's really earned his wins as of late. So, what is your overall outlook on Mackenzie Blackwood? He's still 31st in save percentage. His goals saved above average is still below even. So he's still got some work to do to get those stats back. But what are you seeing from Blackwood, and what do you expect his trajectory to be?
In his first couple of starts, I think Mackenzie Blackwood was among the best goalies that you could find in the East, if not in the entire NHL. I mean, he was that good early on. Those first couple of games against Boston, he got a lot of people excited, thinking that this was the year. He was taking those steps. You thought you can kind of ease him into this role with Corey Crawford. Then you lost Corey to retirement, and you thought, okay, he's still going to be ready. He's going to be okay. And then January 21st comes around, and he goes in the COVID protocol right before the game against the Islanders. And it was a shock. It was the first real big salvo to this team. And if you remember, when they came back, and we spoke to Mackenzie coming back, he was not ready to go. He needed that extra time. He was pretty heavily affected when he was in COVID protocol, and he spoke specifically about his lung capacity and his ability to breathe. And there was a concern for a while that he might not be back to his old form. You don't know what this illness does, especially to a young, promising athlete like Mackenzie, that he might be affected long term. And he was giving up 3 goals a night, 3-4 goals a night. He got pulled in that one game against the Rangers, and yet we've seen him now where he finally seems like he's back to his old form. He finally seems like he's back to his old self. Just the way that he kind of stands, in goal. Some of his late game stands when they're up a goal. It feels like the Mackenzie of old. I think he agrees with that. I think fans agree with that. Lindy Ruff acknowledged that he agrees with that he seems like he's back in his old form. And at the time, it felt like people were ready to kind of get rid of him. I know people were loving Scott Wedgwood, and what's not to love about a guy like Scott Wedgwood and his story? But Mackenzie Blackwood is still a young guy, and he is still the future of this team. There's no question.
Yeah, there's nobody else really. Dawes is a couple years away. Sen, I don't know what he is long term, and Scott Wedgwood's been great this year, but he's been a third goalie for most of his career. So obviously, you're not going in the future with that. I think Blackwood is absolutely the guy. But yeah, no, that's you hit the nail on the head. So I want to kind of go. Some of our listeners may not know that you've that you've been the Devils writer at NorthJersey.com because, you've been writing about other stuff. You've been writing about community sports, some high school sports, some other things. And, you recently got the beat. And you've been doing a good job to start the season. It's been a weird season. It's been a lot to cover, but you get those game stories out and you've added some analysis. And I want to talk about the analysis real quick because we love grades. We love them. They're easy to argue about. They're easy to ramp up discussion because it puts a direct link to what one thinks and what one thinks that the player deserves. So you did grades for the players at the mid-season mark about a week ago. I want to talk to you about this. You went through it. You did your grades. You kind of were looking into you were assessing the season as a whole. What grade surprised you to start?
Well, I will correct you a little bit. I don't officially have the beat just yet. There's obviously.
I'm sorry. I apologize.
It's fine. No, it's fine. I just want to make sure to give a little love to the other guys. It's been kind of a group effort. The main person that's been doing it alongside of myself, and you'll see his name on other things, including the grades, is Sean Farrell, who's also another great writer of ours. And he filled in a lot for Abby Mistraka when she was our writer last year. Sean and I kind of sat down. We discussed a lot of things with the grades, and just tried to figure out where this team stood halfway through the season. And I think the thing that's most surprising to me, looking back, even because it was last week when we published all this stuff, we gave PK Subban a C, and that seems a little unfair. I know that there are probably some fans that would give him a even lower grade if they could help it. PK is kind of that lightning rod on this team in terms of criticism. That's what a $9 million contract will do for you, where when things are not working, people will be critical of yourself. But PK has had a great season, and he's been a catalyst when this team has been buzzing, but he's been a kind of a quiet leader in the background, and that's really his role. He's been a lot better in the second season than he was in his first. The C really came out of where he stands in terms of the amount of cap space that you have to spend on him. He hasn't been perfect. There's no question about that. But he certainly has been better. For me personally, it was surprising that we had to put PK down as low as we did at a C, but I think he's probably as critical of himself as anybody else, and probably wouldn't disagree with it too much.
So the one that you go. Sorry.
No, I mean, I think the people that would probably be surprised the most if you looked at it and you're trying to look at some of the grades we're giving to people, we give Dmitry Kulikov a B, and I think some people might look at that and say, why in the world would you give Dmitry Kulikov a B? And you mentioned some advanced stats. We tried to throw some advanced stats in here as well. We threw in Corsi stats, and Dmitry Kulikov grades out to be one of the best in terms of Corsi per game. And he's just kind of one of those guys. He's not going to jump off the stat sheet too much for you, but he's one of those guys in the background, off the stat sheet that kind of makes things work. And if you don't have a guy like Kulikov on the ice for you, you can see just from an analytics standpoint, things are going to go bad. And so he definitely deserves his B. It might seem weird considering that, like, even Sharon Govich didn't get a B. He graded below that. But we tried to look at the entire season and not just go with recency bias.
So, and obviously I think that, because I was going to question you about the Sharon Govich B-, but I took into account that it was a week ago, and there's probably some recency bias in there. He did have a stretch in the middle that was kind of, like I said, he kind of got forgotten a little bit. The one I did want to question you about, though, and this might be the most volatile player not named Gusev or Subban on the team. I want to talk to you about Michael McLeod. You gave him a C+. Sure. I think if you're grading on a scale, I think you could give him a little bit better. So it depends on how you're grading him. I know the people on the Sunday podcast. The Shorts guy loves McLeod. He's always loved McLeod. He's always rooted for him. So he's very excited about the season. He's a regular in the lineup. He's playing well. When I look at him, I see that he's doing a lot of the extra things. But then when he scored yesterday, I didn't realize he hadn't scored, and I think it was like a lot of games. It was like 11 or 9 or the number is escaping me. I should be better at this. I'm sorry, but sorry, and it's Beer Baron, not Shorts guy. I always get them mixed up with Who Loves McLeod. But anyway, neither here nor there. I didn't realize he was on such a goalless drought. So is that what you accounted for with the C+? Basically, what was your thought process on the grade on McLeod?
Yeah, I mean, McLeod's he's been great. When he was on that line earlier this year, it was Wood, McLeod, and Bastion, and they were the fourth line, and they were, we were trying to nickname it like the energy line, because calling them the fourth line is almost it's almost disrespectful to them, because usually the fourth line, you don't really look at that as being like a top line for you or a line that you want to keep together. But Lindsey Ruff kept that line together because that was a line that really gave the team a boost. So it's not that I don't like what Michael McLeod has done. He's just kind of he's been there. I think the fact that they had the success they did in the fourth line, the reason that line doesn't exist anymore, and the reason they've kind of broken it up, is because they had so much success. When you want to try to catch lightning in a bottle, and that's kind of where the STK line kind of came out of, really from that shuffling. I mean, McLeod's been more about face-offs, and he's had to get a little more physical, especially now with Bastion being out from week to week. McLeod's he's done the little things well, and it shows when you see him on the ice. I'm a big fan of a guy like Michael McLeod, who's not the not the star on the ice, but certainly the one who will put in the grunt work. And it seems like he's when he goes onto the ice, he's bringing his lunch pail with him, and he wants to get down and dirty and do what needs to be done for success. Just in terms of statistics, it's hard to really put him much higher. But McLeod certainly he's not a forgotten part of this team by any stretch.
And before I let you go, you only had one player that was an A, and I don't think anybody could guess it. So why did this player get an A?
Well, we only gave one, and keep in mind we said we weren't grading anyone that had played less than 10 games, and at the time, Scott Wedgwood had not played 10 starts, and yet we said we have to give him a grade. And we had to give him an A. And he's the only person on the team that got an A in the midway part of the season. So I'm not going to give away too much of the other stuff, but like the Seversons and Zakas are A minuses, just for frame of reference. Scott Wedgwood was, as you said, he's a career third goalie. We joked when he got signed back in October. I was on the Zoom call when he was kind of joking around about how he had been just about everywhere in the AHL. He had been just about everywhere in upstate New York at that point. And, for a young guy like him, a guy that he's only 28, but he dates back even to like the Martin Brodeur era of this team in terms of when he first came up. He's a guy that never really got a chance anywhere that he went. He's a guy that got brought in as basically a third-string goalie for Tampa when they were in the bubble last year. And his team won a Stanley Cup, but not really him. So he's always just been that guy that, like, if you just give this guy a shot, he'll show you what he's worth. And when this team was struggling, when they were, flapping their arms in the deep end, you had a guy like Wedgwood in goal, and he really stabilized this team. He gave this team some time to get their bearings underneath them. Every single person on this team was appreciative of him. You could almost feel like if this team goes through, if you watch baseball and you have a team that's going through a bit of a drought, going through a bit of a slump, that he's basically like a slump buster on this team. You feel like you could throw him out there give everyone kind of a break, give Blackwood a breather, and that Wedgwood can kind of stabilize things. And it's not bad for a guy that you thought would maybe be on the taxi squad coming into the year, that you thought you'd be having to lean on a guy like Corey Crawford. So, talk about a guy who's never really given up, and he's been probably one of the more inspirational stories, certainly on the Devils. Probably in the East, he's been one of those guys that you look at that and say, good for him to just kind of stick it out and really make something of himself this year.
Robert, I want to thank you so much for coming on. So plug your stuff. I know you got game scores coming out for every game. So if you want to recap of the game, head to northjersey.com. Or what I like to do is I Google Robert's name. It's right there on the bottom on the lower third. And if you Google his name and Devils, his page will come up and all his past articles. That's where you'll find this grades piece. You had a piece on the rookies, a piece on the defense leading to offense. You had a couple other. Are you working on anything else interesting? Obviously, you got the game pieces every week, but do you got anything else in the works?
We've had a couple of things that I've been trying to work on, and COVID is still COVID, and kind of made some things fall to the wayside. But there's just about every day. Obviously, today was a travel day, so there's not much going on today outside of the signing. There was not much going on with the main club today. So there are lighter days compared to others, but if it's not me, Sean Farrell and Greg Tartaglia and all our other guys, I'll plug them all day long too. I'm not selfish that way at all. Always been a site that you can expect some good quality Devils content over the years and certainly into 2021.
That's Robert Aitken Jr. of NorthJersey.com. Thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Robert. That's Robert Aitken Jr. Hey, I think we made a new friend.
We are all about making friends.
That was good stuff. Giving Scott Wedgwood an A. Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I was floored. You got to go. I don't want to give away any more of his article, but he didn't give Ty Smith an A, obviously. So I was a little floored with his grade. But you got to check it out. You got to see his reasoning. Go northjersey.com, search for Robert Aitken, and it'll come up. Or you search for Devils grades. Just search for something. It'll come up. Search for Devils. It'll come up. I was a little floored with Ty Smith's grade. But again, we don't want to give away the whole article. You gotta be a tease, Sam. You gotta be a tease, and that's what I've been a tease today. I've been teasing it.
Yeah. Well, you know what? I will say that NorthJersey.com over the years has treated me well. When I get Devils content.
Yeah. Yep.
And
like I said, you always gotta. And here's the thing, and Lewis is my boss at Fansided. He runs the whole hockey division, and we've talked about it before. We've talked about the best way because covering games has been a problem for Fansided because it doesn't do well, and the reason it doesn't do well is because you have beat writers he said he's not on the beat, but he's a beat writer for the Devils. Robert is, he's doing well. Chris Ryan is doing well. You have other people who are friends of the podcast. Corey's another guy who doesn't seem to. Corey Mastek of The Athletic doesn't always delve in that. If there's a story within the game, he'll write about it. But there are other people. The AP is writing stuff, but the local guys are doing really well, getting those game stories out and telling it in an interesting enough fashion that a blogger like me doesn't need to do that, because you're going to get it from the professionals. You're going to get it from the people like Robert and people like Chris who are doing that really good work. So I appreciate those guys, and mostly because I hate writing game stories. I'm not a big fan of it. I'd rather write about, I'd rather get super creative and let them take the day-to-day operations, the nuts and bolts, because it's not my forte. I'm not good at nuts and bolts. I'm good at making some off-the-wall reference in an article, and you don't want that in a game score article. You want you want cut and dry in the most interesting way possible, and Robert's doing a good job of doing that. So I appreciate him coming on. We'll have him on again. We got a long season left. What do we got, Sam? We got till May, so we got like 6 weeks, 7 weeks. We got 7 regular season podcasts left. It's weird though. It sounds like that's not that much.
Yeah, you know what? Again, it's like we got our Devils hockey back in mid-January, and it's just going. Yeah. It's like it's going so quick. Like we're doing podcasts every day, because you've got, we picked a heck of a year to do the Let's Go Devils podcast post game, yeah, which airs about 5-10 minutes live after the game, getting reactions from the fans, and it's just like honestly, today is actually my off day.
Yeah,
it's actually my off day because if you think about it, you watch pregame, Erica and Bryce, right? You try to get your analysis going. You watch the whole game because that's what you have to do for a post-game podcast. And then it's usually in the wee hours of the night at times, but yeah, it's like, okay, then you talk about half an hour, 45 minutes, and recapping. You get this is Scotty's recap. We goof around a little bit. Last night, I didn't get home till 2 a.m. because I actually was dumb enough to go down to Philly at Chickies and Pete's, figuring, you know what? Let's start to have a little normalcy here. And I didn't get home till 2 a.m. It takes an hour and 45 minutes to get back home. You pack up, leave, and all that. You stop by a Quick Check. You get something to drink just to make sure that you're awake when you're driving. And then you're back home, right? So,
yeah.
But Ramona Rice.
Well,
yeah.
Before. Oh,
sorry.
No, I just wanted to say, listen, I'm excited for the offseason for one reason and one reason only, and that's because I mean, besides all the content, I get to write about the offseason. The offseason writing is fun because it's all sunshine and fairy tales, and that's what I like. I like sunshine and fairy tales. I don't like it to be negative, but what I like is when you call me. The Devils do something big. You're like, hey, you available? Because I'm not available for these post games, and I'm a reactionary person. I like to react. Yes. I like to make big sentences when something big happens. And, on these podcasts, I think them out. I try to lay down a foundation. I try to put a rundown down of what exactly we're going to talk about, how we're going to make our points. And, I'm still a reactionary person. I'm just that kind of guy. But when you put me on the breaking news podcast, be like, PK Subban got traded, and you call me, or Gusev got traded. We did a podcast right then and there. That's what I miss. I miss being available for those. So the offseason is going to be fun because I'm going to be able to jump on some of those reactionary podcasts with you where we just kind of say stuff that doesn't make any sense. Nick, but it will in time.
Are you asking me that you want to be on the Let's Go Devils podcast taxi squad?
Oh, I thought it was. I thought I was in the starting lineup, but you got to change out lines sometimes. That's how I looked at it.
I know. I'm kidding around, dude. Don't take it seriously. I just like the term taxi squad because now Beer Baron's on the taxi squad for tomorrow. Because this is how it works. Thursdays are tough for Scotty because he actually works late. He's on the West Coast with SiriusXM Liquid Metal, and they always have him working late. Sometimes he's doing payroll. Sometimes I don't know what he does, but he's late and he can't watch the games. And there were a couple times where I had to go solo because Scotty couldn't get out in time. So and Thursdays
and I'm
coming
sleeping
up,
the second that game's over.
So, but I've designated Beer Baron on the taxi squad in case we need him.
There you go. And honestly, the fans have been always so great about all the watchers and listeners have been so great about really coming to bat for those breaking news podcasts and those post games and coming in droves.
Yeah.
But as far as I understand it, Sam, you have some news. This is never an easy transition. But
Yep.
you do have some news, so I just want to give you the floor for a minute.
Yeah. So one of the things that this podcast, all these podcasts that we've done, Woo Report, Let's Go to the Podcast, State of the Fan Address, we've really, our listeners, our viewers have become an extension of the podcast. It's almost like you're in our living room. We read off the comments, we joke around. Sometimes we have you on, all that. Recently, we've gotten, during the pandemic, people thanking us for doing this. And look, it's our pleasure. We love talking Devils hockey, but sometimes we don't realize the impact we've made and all that. But one of our viewers, Nick Chalk, has been going through a bad time, a pretty bad time. He hasn't been watching, but he's been keeping up, with us. But he hasn't been saying much, and all that's going through a bad time. But also, he asked me to give thoughts and prayers out to his niece, who is 4 years old. Her name is Heidi. She was in a very, very bad accident. She's starting to get better, but she's still in the hospital. And every prayer counts. So for everybody that's Facebook Live, YouTube, or wherever, if you want to give your thoughts and prayers, that'd be great. Because, hey, we're a big family now. We just started off with, myself, Shorts Guy, and Beer Baron, and our family and friends. Now the podcast has expanded globally. India, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. We see where these numbers come from. Germany, the UK, don't forget about the UK, Finland, Sweden. We're all over the place right now. And we do read your messages coming in, and every once in a while we'll read it out. But we care about everybody. And this pandemic has been very, at times, very sad. But we're touched that sometimes our viewers reach out to us and letting us know what's going on, because it's always important. And we've had that conversation with Michael Landsberg of TSN about Sick Not Weak. Say something. And our viewers have said things. Sometimes we don't talk about it. We don't air it on air, but we really appreciate people coming to us because that's a good thing, to let it out and express yourself. But anyway, I just wanted to put that out there, that we're rooting for you, Heidi. And Nick, you better show her this podcast, because we're rooting for you, and we're going to need updates. And we're glad that you're getting better, but, hang in there, Heidi. Hang in there.
Yeah. Am I on? Sorry.
Yeah, you're on. You're definitely
okay.
on. Sorry. I was
sorry.
just I had a lot to say.
No, absolutely. This just reminds me of a story from I want to say about a year ago, but Devils fan. He was a follower of the blog, and it's pretty prominent. But he lost his battle with mental illness. So I just want to say, and that, I didn't know him. I didn't. So, and I'm not going to put it on blast. But seeing that a prominent Devils fan, and you see their social media presence, you see everything, but you don't know what people are going through. If you need someone to talk to, for some reason, if it's me, my DMs and my Facebook messages are always open. Talk to me. Well, I am not good at talking about big subjects because I've dealt with probably one too many. But because of what I've dealt with, I've become really good at being a distraction. And I'll tell you jokes. We'll talk Devils. We'll talk stories. I'll tell you funny stories. I will do what I can if I've met you 100 times or if today's the first day I meet you, I will do what I can to get you back on the path. Just if you're going through a tough time and you just need something, DMs, Facebook messages, you could ask for my number in those messages. We can text. Don't go through this alone, folks. That's all I got to say.
Yeah, exactly. And, so, well, Nick, this has been a great podcast today.
Yeah.
Great podcast.
It's hard to transition from that. It is hard to transition from that.
It's extremely hard, but you know what? We're there for the good, the bad, the ugly. Remember that losing streak? We were there. Now we're talking about the youth movement. We're winning. Yeah. I love winning. Right?
We're winning. We're signing the big we're signing the big college prospects, Sam, which is important because they can actually leave. The European ones can't leave. The Russian ones can't leave. The one in juniors can't leave. Those college prospects can leave for free. So signing them is important. Today was a big step to the future. Thompson is a big step. Last year, we made a big step by convincing Walsh to sign and missing his last year at Harvard. I think the pandemic helped a little. One of the very few things that it's helped. It's been terrible, but I think that convinced Walsh the smart thing to do was go pro. Thompson spent another year in college, and now he's at the peak of his powers, and he's going pro. So he's going to be a fun player. He's going to be one to root for. A former 4th-round pick. That's another mid to late round pick, Sam, that is on this team. Sharangovich, Bratt, Maltsev, these players who you're getting in the 4th, 5th, 6th round are becoming NHL players. That's huge. It's huge, Sam. If they could keep doing it.
That's how dynasties are built. Mm-hmm. If you look at the past, what the Detroit Red Wings did picking Pavel Datsyuk.
Datsyuk was the name I was thinking of. That's so weird. We were I was thinking look at when you turn Datsyuk, when you get a guy like Datsyuk in that round, and it means a ton.
And that was the difference between the Red Wings and the Devils because they were kind of in that dynasty period. I think that was the big difference where you have to give the edge a little bit to Detroit because they did win back-to-back Stanley Cups, and they won it in 2002, and then they kept on going, and I think it was 2007, 2008 they won. But that's how Stanley Cups, the dynasties are built. I swear to you. And if the Devils like Sharangovich, Bratt, all these young later round picks are turning out to be productive NHL players. I mean, it's easy to pick Jack Hughes or even Nico Hischier. Although Ray Shearer could have screwed that up. He could have, but and it's not a knock on Nolan Patrick, but I mean Nico Hischier, the upside, and I think he's overachieved at this point because I didn't think he would be that big of a leader wearing the C when he was first drafted. Who knew? Right? Who knew?
Yeah, I mean, nobody thought he was going to be the captain in 3 years. That's crazy.
Yeah.
And Patrick, by the way, I was curious to see what he's been doing this year, and he's been playing the full year. I'm really happy that he's not dealing with the migraines anymore, but I mean, he's got 6 points in 31 games. You can't be happy with that as a Flyers fan.
No, you can't be, especially when there were other players that were picked after him. Like the one in Vancouver, Peterson.
Yeah, you got
Pedersen, yep.
You got Makar.
Yep.
Those are 2 superstars players that they could have had. I wouldn't, so most people would trade Hischier for those 2. I'm still with Hughes in tow. I think Hischier makes a lot more sense to be your Patrice Bergeron and the guy who can center one of the first two lines, but can shut down a team. I think that this team, for dynasty's sakes, for contention's sakes, for championship aspirations' sake, I think that this team, if Hughes turns into what we think he can, this team needs a Heischer more than they need a Pedersen. Makar's a different story. It's hard to deny what Makar could do for this team, but maybe he doesn't come out of college as fast if he signs with the Devils, because the Devils aren't contenders like the Colorado Avalanche are. It changes the trajectory of everything, but I think that I'm okay with the pick. I'm happy with the pick. I'm happy the Devils have Heischer.
Oh, yeah. Absolutely. I mean, it's not all about, the best players. It's find the one that's right for your organization. And you needed a figurehead at that point in that draft. You needed a figurehead. And who better? When we look at prospects and we look at young players, we're always looking at, statistics. We're looking at film and all that. But I could have never imagined Nico Heischer having that mean streak, that leadership skill where with the Devils are down 4-0, he's still going. He's still playing. And he'll score it and make it 4-1. So it's not a shutout. Or 4-2. Yeah. Like, we've seen so many of those games. And this is a young Devils team that's, again, the organization is rebuilding. Now we're starting to see some signs of life. Maybe that COVID pause really screwed things up. Because, that game against Buffalo, they started to feel really good about themselves till everything stopped. And then after, it takes time to recover, and it may still take time. But it looks like the team is back, having fun, going into Washington with a better penalty killing unit, better, just more confidence, winning 3 out of the last 4. Could they actually pull it off in Washington? We shall see. They're a much better team on the road. I will say that. They are a much better team on the road. I don't know why, but they are.
Yeah. I mean, I know why. You brought up the COVID thing definitely helps, but the momentum, stopping that momentum meant everything. Winning at home and ending the 10-game at home losing streak, even though it was the lowly Sabres, just getting that off their back. Winning in the green jersey, winning, Blackwood playing well. Those three things were so important. Then you bring Wedgwood in, he plays extremely well. And then you bring Blackwood in again. He plays well again. And then you beat a good team in the Penguins, and you beat a good team. The Flyers are a mess right now, but they're still good.
Oh yeah. They were sloppy last night. The Flyers were sloppy last night. They don't look like a team that's in sync or playing together. They are a talented team. I don't care what people say. They are a talented team. I just, again, when you're in a funk, you're in a funk, and they were just basically giving away passes to the Devils. Really, they were just turning it, passing to our guys. Couldn't believe it.
And it was funny because, NBC Sports had the Flyers feed on, so you kind of had to get their perspective on everything, which is kind of a pain in the butt. But that's what you're going to have to deal with sometimes. But it was funny that they were I think 3 of the 4 goals came off turnovers in the defensive zone by the Flyers. And that's huge, especially that with 5 seconds left, getting that momentum to take the lead on the Palmieri shot. That was huge. A lot of yesterday was huge. Palmieri scoring, but McLeod scoring again, getting those guys off the schneid is huge. And we're running to the end here, but I think that I think that we're going in the right direction, Sam. I don't want to talk about playoffs just because Boston has that ridiculous stretch against Buffalo and they could win every single one of those games. I think Philly's out. I think Philly's done just because of the schedule that's in front of Boston. I think that we know it's Boston, New York, Philly, and Washington are the 4 teams. Now we just have to figure out what order they're going to come in. And I think New York is out. New York is playing well, but they have a stinker every so often. So,
talking about the Rangers?
Yeah, sorry, the Rangers. Yeah, I think that we know the 4 teams in this league. I think we're going to be fighting for scraps at the bottom, but it's going to be fun. And that was the point. When we came back from the pause and we beat Boston on the second game back from the pause, I said that this team was fun. And then it fell apart. It literally fell apart at the seams, and it wasn't fun anymore. We were allowing like 17 high-danger chances a game. It was a mess. But now it's fun. And I made some predictions on pucksandpitchforks.com that are going to go up tomorrow morning. And, most of them are pretty positive. I think that's going to be a mostly positive second half of the year. I think you're going to be able to go into offseason with some good takeaways. And I think we're going to be excited about next season. I think there's going to be some hype around this team because I think Jack Hughes is going to look good. One stat I want to share with you, Sam. Jack Hughes has 9 shots in the power play this year. He's been on the power play for 83 minutes. They got to fix his power play. But beyond that, I think that there's some positive regression that we're going to see. I think that we're going to see some movement towards the mean. I think that they're going to be a league average team by year's end. And then next year, they can make some moves and they become a playoff contender, fighting for that last spot.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. And Ramona Rice, she asked about Tice Thompson. Go to pucksandpitchforksblog.com. Nick has a write-up about him if you want some more details. Yeah, Nick, any final words?
That's all I got.
That's all you got? Oh, all right. Well, I want to thank everybody for watching, listening. Thank you. We had a record day of podcast downloads. We'll drop the podcast at midnight tonight. Go to pucksandpitchforksblog.com. Till next time, let's go Devils.